When it comes to online criticism, some reviews are just, meh, they're negative. But then there are others that are practically an art form of just pure, unfiltered takedown. Today, we're going to dissect the anatomy of one of those truly scathing critiques, breaking down its arguments, its tone, and its biggest complaints to really understand what makes the style of review so, well, so powerful.
Right off the bat, the reviewer doesn't ease you into it. Nope. They start with this central question, and boy, does it set the tone for everything that's about to follow. It frames the show not as just, a piece of entertainment to be analyzed, but as a failure so complete, the critic is left wondering how to even begin to describe it.
So where does a takedown like this even start? Well, the first major line of attack targets what they see as a total failure in the basics, character development. It's that classic writing critique, right? Show, don't tell. But as you're about to see, it's applied here with like a sledgehammer.
Okay. So the core complaint is that after almost a whole season, the connections between the main characters feel completely unearned. The argument is, the show tells us these people are a team, it tells us they care about each other, but it never actually shows us the moments that would build those relationships. It just leaves everything feeling kind of hollow.
And right here, the reviewer basically lays out their own standard for what good writing is. See, this isn't just some vague complaint. It's a judgment based on a core belief. You get emotionally invested by witnessing development, not just by being told it already happened. And that idea, it becomes the lens for pretty much all the criticism that follows.
And this critique of shallow development then gets aimed at individual characters. The reviewer is basically claiming that key figures are just one-dimensional, reduced to a single trait, or, a negative stereotype. In their view, these characters don't feel like real people. They just exist to serve some narrow function for the plot.
Okay, moving on. The critique gets broader now, expanding from the characters to the plot itself, with some really serious accusations of deeply inconsistent and just illogical writing. The argument is that the show doesn't just fail its characters, it actively breaks the rules of its own universe. And the hologram character Sam is presented as Exhibit A in the case against the show's logic. The critic points to this character again and again as the prime example of writing where the rules seem to be made up and then immediately broken on the fly.
So here's the list of contradictions that really fuels the argument. The character's abilities seem to just change based on whatever the plot needs in that exact moment. One minute she's intangible, phasing through phaser fire. The next she can be physically tied up. For this critic, it's not nuance. It's a sign that the writers themselves have no clear idea how any of their own shit works.
And this whole critique of Sam is then used to talk about the entire world building. The reviewer points to all these other examples, like technology being super convenient, continuity errors, moments where characters just know things they shouldn't, as more evidence of what they call fatally flawed writing, where the plot always wins out over established logic.
And from here, this is where the review pivots. It moves away from the mechanics of plot and character to more direct ideological critiques. This is where the analysis really digs into the show's perceived social commentary, its representation, and even the way the characters talk.
Get this. One of the most direct and quantitative claims is this character tally. The critic literally counts the perceived sexual orientations of the main cast to argue that there's a deliberate and, in their view, significant imbalance in representation. They don't just frame it as a choice, they call it a thrashing.
This theme then gets blown up into this bigger claim of consistent misandry. The reviewer asserts that male characters are systematically portrayed as weak or villainous, while female characters are handed unearned credit for their work. This is presented as this bias that is, in the critic's own words, dripping all over the show.
The critique also takes aim at the language itself. This quote is used to highlight dialogue that the reviewer feels is completely out of place, what they call modernity speak. The argument is the characters in a 32nd century sci-fi show are using terms and ideas pulled directly from 21st century online discourse, which, for the critic, just shatters the whole illusion of the world.
So you take all these arguments about the characters, the plot, the ideology, and they all converge into the reviewer's final, totally unambiguous verdict. And well, it's pretty much summed up by this one sentence. It's not just a bad episode or a disappointing season. The critic declares it the single worst piece of television they have ever witnessed, a statement that leaves absolutely no room for debate.
So the conclusion is just this barrage of final blows, framing the show as a total failure on every single level, as a part of its franchise, as a piece of television, and just as a coherent story. The final word is that the people who made it simply don't understand their own creation.
So, after breaking all of that down, the real question isn't whether you agree or disagree with the review, right?
It's about what this kind of passionate, detailed, and openly hostile critique tells us about modern fandom. What does it say about the relationship between creators and their audience today? I mean, that's the bigger question this whole thing leaves you with.